I was born here by these waters, in this world, well, it's all I know. I've been raised in these woods around me. Where else would I go? Saddle up, old partner, let's take one last ride up through those foothills today.
The pioneering days of the West for many of us are just tales now, yet their grandeur and awe continue to pique our interest. It was a time when man took it upon himself to go where many had never set foot before. For some, it was an adventure too good to pass up, but for others, it was the promise of steady work that led them on the journey. This is the story of many families who ended up settling in the Peace region many years ago, which now make up the majority of our aging population. Perfectly tucked in a valley, Chetwynd and the surrounding area was booming with forestry and sawmill jobs back in the 50s. For Jim Bremner, this opportunity was too good to pass up.
You know, one of my brothers come out to looking for work, and you could get 80 cents an hour in the bush in Alberta, and you get $1.25 a year, so we just kept coming west. That's why we came here.
This 100-year-old pioneer was born on January 16, 1918, in Unity, Saskatchewan, to parents Richard and Abby Bremner. After several years of bad harvests, the Bremner family moved to Loon Lake near Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan in the 1930s.
Everybody was splurging in 28, and then 29, when the bottom fell out of the stock market, had nothing.
Big Great Depression.
Just from having everything you want to having nothing.
What was the Great Depression like? What do you remember of those days?
Well, you're goddamn lucky to get enough to eat. That was one of the main things.
It was tough.
They lived off the farm. That's what they did. And, you know, you grew your own gardens and your meat and whatever. And
did you help out around the farm back then?
well, of course. Everybody had to. That's what I told you. I was driving 12 head of horses when I was 13 years old.
By the 1940s, Jim was now a young man, and like many other young men of his time, he enlisted in the Army.
I joined the Army a couple times before that, but I had a bad leg, and it wouldn't take me in. But finally they got, so they needed manpower a little worse, I guess. So I got in. I don't know, you just want to do your thing, I suppose. I don't know. Thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very brave thing to do.
Well, you don't think about that, I don't think. Well, you know, I haven't thought about that. There was conscription in this country, too. And a lot of guys are scared of that army. All they can see is bullets, and they're all coming right at them. And there's dozens of guys that went through that army. Some of them never even got a scratch. And it went tough going, too. So, you know, a lot of luck mixed up with it.
So you were in England when the Germans were bombing it, the Blitzkrieg.
Yeah, that's what the anti-aircraft was, is shooting at their airplanes.
Did you see lots of action of bombing?
Oh, sure, for about, they quit bombing in about, didn't see much. The last, I think, about early 45.
Though Jim saw some tough times in Europe, love was just around the corner for him. After serving 4 years in the Army, he returned, and in 1950, he married Phyllis Nee Nichols.
Leave these trees and protect this water.
His wife, she was a gem. She really was. I come this hall today, and I think of being here for their 50th anniversary, and they were dancing.
What were they like as a couple?
Excellent couple.
Yeah.
They would. He could tell you a joke today. So he'd tell a good joke, and then Aunt Phyllis, his wife, would say, "Well, what about this one, Jim?" Yeah. And so then he'd start, and sometimes he couldn't figure it just there, and so she'd prompt him, and on they went. No, they were just a really good couple. I can see in my mind the family that supports him today and every day, that they had good parents.
In the following years, they had 5 children and decided to embark on their journey to British Columbia in search of work.
Who did you work for, the first people in Jackford?
Harry Nichols.
And that's Marlon's dad, right?
Yeah.
And what were you doing for Mr. Nichols?
We were horse logging.
Horse logging.
And worked in his mill. I did everything he had to do. I could do any job he had, so there was always work to be done.
Within a year of their stay in Little Prairie, they decided to head back to Saskatchewan to sell their property and move permanently to BC to start a new chapter in their lives.
They had 6 children.
6 children?
Yeah.
Which one are you?
The youngest.
The youngest, you're the baby.
I'm the baby.
Did he have a special place for you in his heart, or what, because you're the baby?
Probably.
I'm sure he did for all of you, regardless.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Did he baby you in any ways?
I don't think so, but my siblings might think so.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your dad. What was he like as a father?
He's an awesome father, yeah. Really good.
What do you remember with him as a child?
He was always around the horses and stuff like that. And always out in the country kind of guy. And yeah, he worked in the bush logging, and basically he did that all his life, so yeah.
You had no running water or no hydro, right?
No. Running water in the creek.
What about hydro? Did you have hydro?
No shit, no, there was no hydro every year.
What did you do for lighting and heat?
Well, we'd gas lamps and whatever, and then we'd eventually have a light lamp, and you go up as everything, you get a little more you go.
How old were you when Jim started working for your dad?
15.
15? What do you remember of Jim back then?
Well, Jim was a guy you'd want to have around when you have a sawmill and a horse operation, because he knew horses, he knew machinery, he was a driver, and he took no nonsense from us young guys. And he had the most colorful and creative ways of expressing his opinion.
Okay, fair enough. But I hear he was a hard worker.
Oh, absolutely. He was a workaholic.
Yeah?
I wouldn't, maybe that's not saying it right, but he was a hard worker, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the highlights that I remember from him as being a boy was when the railway first came through in 1957.
Okay.
They had built the right-of-way, but there was no rail on it at that time, and it was March of '57. The weather had been really nice. It was warm, spring was coming on, lots of Chinook weather. And some railway officials, some government officials, radio announcer from Victoria all came up to Fort St. John.
Yeah.
They hired a guy in Fort St. John with a bombardier. Now that's a track machine similar to a crew cab pickup.
Okay.
So they had about 6 or 7 guys. They were going to come through from Fort St. John, follow down the railway grade and into, it was Little Prairie at that time, not Chetland. So they were going to do that. Well, first day out, up north of what they call Manias now, up in that area north of Del Rio, they ran out of gas and didn't know exactly what to do at first. They weren't dressed for winter, and that night a blizzard set in, and I mean a blizzard. It dropped in about an hour from 30 above to 30 below, and that's Fahrenheit. So it was cold. And the northwest wind, 30, 40 miles an hour wind, just drifting like you wouldn't believe.
So you went and rescued them?
Well, I guess so. They were in that shack. I don't know if it's much of a rescue. I drove in there and kicked the door open. They were all in their sleeping bags on the floor. And one old boy had an English accent. I said, and what the hell are you guys doing here, in a vacation or what? Vacation, hell, he said.
So the guy that was in charge of the expedition, he was a local guy from Fort St. John.
Okay.
So he was a little more equipped for
What was about to happen?
what was about to happen.
Yeah.
That's right. But the guys from Victoria, they weren't.
No clue.
And there was an older fellow with him. He was a railway surveyor. He told us afterwards, he said, I don't know what's the matter with my head because I've surveyed railways all over the world. And he said, I should have known better than this. He said, I'm dressed for summer. I got leather boots on and thin socks. And so they started walking because from where they ran out of fuel at Manaus there, the first civilization was our logging camp here at Big Lake. Well, that's like close to 40 miles. So they started to walk. The first night they spent under a spruce tree around the campfire trying to keep a little bit warm. The next morning they walked from there down to, I don't know if you know where Richters live now, but there was,
No, I don't.
it's about 6 miles north of Big Lake.
Okay.
But there was nobody living there. But there was an old shack there. The homesteader that had built this cabin built it out of green lumber, and the boards had shrunk, you know, dried over the years. It had a roof on it. There was an old wood cook stove in it, one of those old timers. That, so they built a little fire and then they hovered around that and kept their hands from freezing, but they couldn't keep their feet from freezing. And I remember Jim saying when he was the one that went to rescue them, because after spending the first night under the spruce tree, the second night in that, well then the guy that was in charge knew I got to do something to get these guys out of here. They're all going to freeze to death.
Yeah, of course. But how did Jim hear about that?
Well, the guy in charge, he ended up walking on down to the sawmill camp and came in there and explained what had happened. Well, just in no time, he got the horses hooked up to the sleigh. The sleigh had a flat deck on it about 8 feet wide and 10 or 12 feet long. And I remember Mom gathering up quilts and blankets, mattresses. Back then, the bunkhouses, they all had those narrow cots about that wide, and so they all had mattresses. They grabbed those mattresses off the beds in the bunkhouse and threw them on the sleigh, and all the quilts and blankets, and away he went. I wanted to go with him, but he wouldn't let me go. He said, I got enough trouble. He said, keeping those guys warm without keeping you warm.
Yeah,
he said, you stay right here and make sure there's wood in the wood box so that when we get back, they can warm up. Good. So he had his team of black horses hooked up there, and he took off on the trot.
Mrs. Nichols sent up a box of grub and a tea can and whatever.
Oh, that's
and there was
nice.
a little old cook stove in there, you know, one of them tin camp stoves or whatever.
Right.
Wasn't even a fire in it.
They were just
There was
ready to
about
freeze.
500 feet of plain lumber laying there on the floor, and an old axe. And I said, why didn't you build a fire? Nothing to burn. I said, what the hell's wrong with that boards there? They burn pretty good. Can't burn a man's lumber. I said, you can goddamn freeze to death too, can't you? Wasn't long until we had a fire going on that stove. I told him, I said, the best thing you guys can do is when you get on that sleigh, roll up in those sleeping bags because it's cold out there.
Yeah.
Jesus, wind is blowing, snow flying, eh?
Wow.
Oh, we'll be all right. He said, suit yourself. One guy had a felt hat on. One guy had a sweater, no jacket.
Yeah.
We weren't very far on the road till they were getting in them sleeping bags. They decided maybe they better crawl into them.
They were glad you showed up then.
Yeah, we brought them down and they took them in. Mrs. Nichols got them in and fed them and got them warmed up.
Let's do it 3 more times. Love is gonna come round again. It's gonna come round again. It's gonna come round again. Let's have some crazy harmonies. Love is gonna come round again. It's gonna come round again. It's gonna come round again. Rise to the top of the roof. I was born here by these waters, in this world, well, it's all I know. I've been raised in these woods around me. Where else would I go?
This pioneer has traveled all over the Peace region, but it's this 480 acres of land that he calls home. He got this land by applying for an agricultural land lease, better known as the Homestead Act. This meant he and his family had to do the improvements themselves. Back then, this was known as proofing up the land.
The crowd below.
Yeah, and did you settle this area? How did you get this to this spot?
Oh, Jesus, I don't know. I worked for old Adam Natter up here for a few years. And with survey crews, whatever, he applied for this place in my name, eh? Mm-hmm. And then he said, we'll agree to split company or whatever. He had a partner. We'll do the improvements on that place and we'll go half on it. And I said, no, we won't. I'll do the improvements on that place and I'll have it all. Don't need your help.
What year was that?
Oh, geez, in the 50s, huh?
It was on this land that Jim set up shop and became well known for selling lumber.
So you operated the mill and over there for, you sold a lot of wood, didn't you?
On this thing? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sold lots of wood. A lot of 2-inch stuff, you know, like 2x6. A lot of people buy it for fencing and whatever, do we? And anybody wanted 2x6 for rafters or something on a building, wanted longer stuff, they'd come here to get it, eh? Because I could stop at 21 or 2 feet on that whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Did you have help sawing?
No, no top saw, no.
No, did you have any help with it?
Oh, just a family.
Yeah.
Mostly.
So I mean, I think it's fair to say he's, give or take, in the last of his years, unless the man pulls a miracle and lasts another 50 years. But what would you say his legacy would be as far as what he'll be remembered for in his family?
Oh, just being able to do what he does, working all the time, and never seems to want to slow down. You know, he was actually clearing land when he was 97 years old.
Really?
He broke his last horses to drive when he was just about 90. Yeah, and he was, like I said, he was on his tractor doing some tilling this fall. So he's only a few months from 100. So I mean, he's just a go-getter, like, doesn't know how to stop.
And while he was known for being a hard-working man, perhaps it's his love for horses that people will never forget when they think about him.
Always the horse logging and horses. Everything you hear about Jim always comes back to horses, one way, shape, or form. Yeah, and I just, you know, for an example, one of the stories that Doris had told me was, you know, he was breaking horses into not too many years ago. And one of the times when they were breaking horses, of course the horse got away from them, and everybody got thrown, you know, every which way. And the horse took off and ended up running over top of a car and dumping them all in a pile of willows, horse included. And, you know, and so that was his life. He had that spirit in him to, you know, to do those kinds of things.
You're 100 years old. What kept you alive so long?
I don't know. Eating good grub and drinking like right kind of whiskey, I don't know. Outside, I think actually it's, you know, the living out in the fresh air or whatever. I never was an indoor person. Always working outside.
Any piece of advice that you can give?
To what?
To your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your great...
Well, one of the best thing you can do is be honest, you know, and don't try and do, you know, rob people or whatever. Honesty is the best way to live. As far as I ever could figure out.
CHET TV and Peace FM are dedicated to the safety of the communities of the Peace. We will interrupt regular programming and bring you emergency bulletins in the case of serious road closures, floods, evacuations, natural gas leaks, oil spills, fires or explosions in the Peace. Your community TV station, in collaboration with Peace FM, will update you about gathering points where evacuees will meet and where emergency social service resources are available to you during and after an event. Tune into CHET TV at Channel 655 on Bell and Telus, Channel 55 on Air, and Channel 40 on Eastlink. And Peace FM is heard on 94.5 FM in Chetwynd and 104.1 in Dawson Creek. Community TV and radio are here for you 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year.
Beans again?
Dog goes, now. Fish goes, bubble up. Cat goes, open that can. Meow, open that can. Cat goes, open that can. Meow, open that can. Cat goes, open that can.
enjoy using my imagination lots, and pretty much you can create anything. Like there's no instructions to follow or anything.